I slept with my attractive boss and now my girlfriend isn't talking to me. How do I make her realize that I love her and we should stay together? I have been dating my girlfriend for 2 years now, and she is literally the perfect woman. She always stays up for me when I come back late from a party. She makes handmade meals for me to take to work and takes care of all the chores without even me saying anything. The best part is that she does all this while balancing her own job on the side. She even got a promotion recently. Even when I want to initiate intimacy, she never refuses and goes along with all my whims. To my knowledge, I was her first ever boyfriend, so I took all her firsts, and we share a bond that can never be broken. That being said, we have had our ups and downs as well. During these 2 years, there were times when I yelled at her and got so mad that I sometimes hit her as well. One time, she put my white clothes in the laundry along with her colored clothes, and everything got ruined. I got so mad that I ended up taking away her car keys for a couple days. But I always apologized afterwards and made sure to make it up to her by taking her on multiple, expensive dates. We would always sort out our differences and no fights lasted longer than a week. I was sure that we would go on to marry each other and spend the rest of our lives together, but then an event in my life changed everything. My boss at my workplace retired and was replaced by a woman from a different branch. As soon as I laid my eyes on her, I knew that she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Don't get me wrong, my girlfriend is also extremely pretty, but her charm lies in her personality. Anyway, I decided that having a friendly relationship with my boss would help my career, and would often call out to her at work. She would also respond in kind, and we would sometimes end up talking for hours and not get any work done. I felt bad that I was spending time with another girl while my amazing girlfriend was waiting at home for me, but we were just friends. Besides, I had a lot in common with her that I didn't with my girlfriend, like my music and food tastes. When my boss heard that I liked sushi, she invited me to have dinner at a high-end restaurant and I accepted without hesitation. I had to dress appropriately for the venue, so I bought and wore a new suit. I told my girlfriend that I was going to a business meeting at night, and that she shouldn't wait up for me. I could have told her the truth, but it was just a friendly dinner and I didn't want her to overthink and worry needlessly. I arrived at the location and waited for my boss to arrive. But as soon as I saw her, I was left flabbergasted. She was wearing a gorgeous red dress and looked like she had come to steal my heart away. The thoughts of my girlfriend were pushed to the back of my mind as I treated my boss like a queen throughout the evening. The intimate tension between us was undeniable, and she knew it. So once we finished eating, she invited me back to her place for some coffee. At the time, I was totally drunk on the atmosphere and couldn't resist, and intimacy with her felt incredibly good. I woke up the next morning in a bed with my boss laying next to me, and realized what I had just done. I quickly put my clothes on and rushed home to see my girlfriend. But one thing was sure, I could never tell her what had happened that night. After all, it was never my intention to hurt her and I still loved her a lot. When I got home, she hugged me tightly and said she was worried. We shared a nice breakfast together and it didn't look like she suspected anything. But a few days ago, everything fell apart. I had made the mistake of texting my boss on social media and talking about the amazing night we shared together. I didn't know that I was still logged in on my laptop, and lent it to my girlfriend for a project she needed to complete. She saw the texts between us and was completely horrified. She began crying buckets upon buckets of tears and wouldn't stop no matter how hard I tried to comfort her. She didn't even let me hug her, and just went to her parents' house after calling me a jerk. Ever since then, I have been trying to contact her but she isn't responding at all. I have sent her infinite texts and voicemails apologizing for my actions, and explaining that we can get through this together. I begged her to not throw away our 2-year relationship over a one-night mistake, but she still didn't reply. Today, I got a call from her dad explaining that he will come to pick up all her stuff, and that she will never be returning to this house. I demanded that he let me talk to her, because then everything will be resolved, but he refused. I don't understand. Up until now, we have always gotten through our ups and downs, so why is she ignoring me now? What I did was just a mistake that I deeply regret, and I want to apologize to my girlfriend in person. I need to tell her how much I love her, and that we have our whole future ahead of us. She could date him. My boyfriend has known his best friend Carly for 5 years, ever since Carly moved in next door to him. I know she's obsessed with romance books, so I think she's convinced herself they'll fall in love just because they're next door neighbors. And watching Taylor Swift's You Belong With Me music video has added to her delusions. Anyway, it took a while for me to notice the signs, but thinking back, it was clear from day one that she did not like me. For starters, when my boyfriend introduced me to her she said, "Oh, so you're the little girlfriend." At first, I brushed it off, but everything got worse from that moment on. One time, she even called me a pet because I'm always following him around. I've told my boyfriend that I don't want her around me anymore if she's just going to keep making comments like that. He told me she was just intoxicated that day and didn't mean it, so I should give her another chance. Plus, all his friends are her friends, so it would be impossible to go somewhere she isn't. But fine. I put my feelings aside just this once and gave her the benefit of the doubt. So, we end up going to a friend's house party. It's pretty PG stuff, so if she says anything wild, alcohol doesn't work as an excuse. We're one of the first people to get there and we're just talking with our other friends. At some point, I lay my head on my boyfriend's lap and as if on cue, Carly shows up. She comes running towards my boyfriend, calling him bestie, and has her arms wide open for a hug. I guess she expected him to get up and hug her back, but he just stayed seated and pulled me closer to him. She noticed that and her face became visibly angry for a second. Before she switched back to happy, she said, "Bestie, you're not even going to hug me now? Is it because your girlfriend's here? Is she the jealous type?" I rolled my eyes at that. My boyfriend said, "No, I just don't want to hug you." I tried so hard not to laugh. I knew she was pissed now, but she masked it really well. She responded with, "Well, why not? You love hugging me. You always hug me to sleep, remember? Come on, just hug me." I think she was trying to make me jealous because of her comment about him hugging her to sleep, which is so not true. My boyfriend just shook his head and she kinda gave up, but she threw the nastiest glare my way. Eventually, my boyfriend got up to get us something to drink and Carly ran over to sit next to me. She told me, "Listen, just because you have him now doesn't mean you'll always have him." I asked her what she meant by that even though it was so clear she wanted him. She said that I was just his plaything and he'll get over me once we have intimacy. Little does she know, he says I'm the best he's ever had. I asked her why she wanted him so badly and she denied it to the ends of the world. She called me stupid, but once my boyfriend came over with our drinks, she switched up. He gave me my drink and she instantly pouted, asking where her drink was. He said it was in the kitchen and then took my hand to take us somewhere she wasn't. I think he's been seeing that I was right, that she doesn't like me and she wants to date him. After the party, he went low contact with her. He barely answered her calls, and she calls him like 50 times a day. Whenever he did answer, he would make any excuse to hang up. Other times he told me to answer just to piss her off, which it did. She kept asking me why I was answering his phone and saying that I'm being controlling because she can't understand why he would stop talking to her all of a sudden. It wasn't until we went to a party, where we knew or at least thought, she wasn't invited to. My boyfriend and I had lots to drink and we ended up separated due to our different friend groups pulling us apart. I was with 2 girls and 1 guy. He was hitting one of my friends so me and the other girl were trying to hook them up. I guess from afar it looked like we were the ones hitting on him, I don't know actually. I didn't even touch the guy. But as I would later come to find out, Carly had convinced my boyfriend that I cheated on him that night with the guy. My boyfriend confronted me 2 days after ghosting me, which I assumed he spent with Carly, but he later reassured me that wasn't the case. He asked me to tell him the truth, that if anything had happened with this guy, I could be honest with him and he wouldn't be mad. I asked what he was talking about and he told me Carly had snapped pictures of me flirting with the guy and showed them to my boyfriend as proof. I asked to see these pictures and it didn't take long to see that they were photoshopped. Not only were they poorly edited, but my outfit had been switched with the one my friend had on, the one who was actually hitting on the guy. I wouldn't expect a guy to realize that, but I was wearing my favorite top that night, which was nowhere in sight in this picture. I told him to call up my friends to confirm my story if he didn't believe me, because unlike me, they weren't as wasted. He said he didn't need to because he believed me. He just needed to see if Carly had actually lied to him to ruin our relationship. Which yeah, she did, but it backfired completely on her. My boyfriend called her up and said he never wants anything to do with her ever again. She cried on the phone and begged him to reconsider, that I was the cheater and she let it slip that he should be with her instead. I laughed so loud at that. She was trying to hide it, but she had finally reached her breaking point and I was so happy I was there to witness it. My parents neglected me and told me I was a burden my entire life. Years later they went bankrupt and are asking me for money. For as long as I can remember, my parents have treated me like I intruded upon their life. They had me when they were 19, and still wanted to enjoy their life. So they would leave me off at home and go to parties or even overseas trips. You see, the doctors told my mom that it would be highly unlikely for her to have another kid after giving birth to me. So they sometimes acted like I didn't exist, and just pawned me off to others. The babysitter they hired for me hated me, and I literally had to beg her for my food. She would make me do all the chores so she could get paid extra, and get physical if I refused. Whenever I went to my parents to tell them how she treated me, they would tell me to stop bothering them and that they were too busy to talk about kid stuff. This one time, all my friends were really excited because our school was taking us on a trip. But we needed permission from our parents, so I went to ask them to sign the papers. They were dressing up to go to a dinner date, and kept ignoring me when all I wanted was for them to sign a damn paper. The kid me was so sad that they didn't care about me that I cried myself to sleep that night. But I wish it had ended there. When I was 8, my mom became pregnant and the doctors called it a miracle. And to my surprise, my parents spoiled their second son like they had never spoiled me. They bought new clothes for him every month, went to all his school events and always canceled their plans if he was sick. The thing is, they still treated me like I wasn't even their son. They still never celebrated my birthday and instead used that time to once again go on couples-only dates. But when it was my brother's turn, they would throw a huge party in the most expensive restaurant in town. I actually got fed up one day and just decided to ask them why they treated us so differently, and did they not love me? Their response still haunts me till this day. You were a burden, but he is a miracle that we will be forever thankful for. I realized then that I would never get anything from them, and began working for my own stuff. I got a job in high school and saved up enough money to move out at 18. They didn't even react when I told them I wasn't going to live in their house anymore, and my brother was just happy to have all their love to himself. I still loved them in my head, and wanted them to at least say goodbye, but they didn't even do that. I had to wait 2 years to enter college because I didn't get a 100% scholarship, and had to save up money to pay my own tuition. My mother would sometimes call to ask me how I was doing, but would always end up just telling me about her problems instead of helping me. When I did eventually enter college, I decided to completely cut them off. It did wonders for my mental health and I met my wonderful wife in one of my classes. She was like the light in the dark for me, and I told her about how my parents had treated me. So she helped me get over my trauma, and in doing so, I fell in love with her. The stupid me ended up asking her to marry me after just 5 months of dating, but surprisingly, she didn't say no. She said she would gladly accept any ring I bought for her, even if it was an engagement ring. I was really happy but also got a wake-up call, and didn't rush into our marriage. Instead, I worked on building my own business from the ground up that ended up being really successful. My degree was centered around civil engineering, and my company basically took contracts from whoever wanted work done on their house. It generated so much revenue that I was able to buy a house that me and my girlfriend could both live in. She stayed with me through all that struggle, and any doubt in my mind had been erased. So I took her on a vacation to Paris, and this time, I proposed properly with a ring in my hand. It's been 2 years since then, and I am enjoying my married life to the fullest. But the only thing that could destroy my happiness came back into my life. Last week, out of nowhere, I received a call from my father. This man had not talked to me in years and didn't even know I was married. That being said, I wasn't really angry at my parents anymore since my wife had enabled me to move on, so I decided to talk to him. I took the call near my wife and put it on speaker. First he asked how I was and how life was treating me, so I told him about my business. There was a sudden shift in his tone from sad to a happy one. He wasted some time by telling me about how my mom was still attractive, and then finally got to the point. I don't know what I expected, but I should have known that he still didn't love me or even wanted to love me. It turns out, he had recently been fired from his job and had no savings whatsoever. My parents had literally declared bankruptcy to get out of some payments, but the bank was still demanding that they pay their mortgage. Bottom line, they wanted me to send them some money. I couldn't believe their audacity for a second, and had to do a double take. I asked about my brother, because he should have been old enough to earn by now. Well, all their love for him had gone down the drain, because he had dropped out of college and was just living off the allowance they gave him. That revelation was so ridiculous that I actually burst into laughter, and told my dad, "I'm sure you see the irony too. The son that you loved and treated like a king can't help you when you're in trouble. But the son that you neglected and called a burden is now successful, and you're begging him for money. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you help your parents?" My mom snatched the phone from him and started calling me ungrateful. She said that they had done their best to raise me, and took care of me while still in college, even though they could have easily abandoned me for adoption. In her opinion, I had an obligation to help them and pay them back for everything they did for me. At this point, my wife also started laughing, so my mom went completely ballistic, and began yelling at us for being a bunch of entitled kids. So I told her that the only thing she is going to get from me is a signed paper stating that I am no longer their child, and hung up.
Entitled stepbrother wants to use my inheritance money to buy himself a car? Have fun sleeping on the streets. My dad remarried when I was 16, but I never got along with my stepbrother even though we are the same age. Ever since he moved in with me and my dad, he has acted like he owned the place. He leaves his clothes all over the house and refuses to pick them up even when I ask him to. I like to cook my own food and often save my leftovers for later. But he just eats them without asking first, and then denies doing it by saying he doesn't even like my food. He also stinks up the place since he rarely showers, and when I confront him, he gets mad and says something along the lines of, "It's my house and I can do whatever I want. If you have a problem with it, then you can leave." I tried to get my dad to do something about this, but my stepmother would always intervene and say he's just a child, and that I can be more mature about calling him out. Thanks to that reason, I normally tend to avoid everyone and just stay in my room. But I couldn't always do that at family functions. This one time, he was bragging about how he was going to impress this girl in his class by taking her on a road trip. I ended up laughing and spilling my drink because it was so hilarious, and told him, no girl wants to be with someone who doesn't even take a shower. Well, apparently, it was a known fact that he stinks, and everyone started snickering. He saw the look on their faces, and called me a liar and that I was just jealous of him. Since that day, he has hated me with a passion. Instead of eating my leftovers, he would just throw them out without any explanation. He mixed his colored clothes with my laundry and ruined all my white clothes. I was so tired of him and my dad not doing anything about it, that I applied to a faraway college and moved out of the house. That proved to be a good decision because I no longer had to walk on eggshells and watch my surroundings. I was going to make sure to enjoy my college life. But in my junior year, I got the worst news of my life. My dad had a terrible accident on the highway, and passed away on impact. I couldn't even believe that he was gone, and wept like a baby at the funeral. I requested some time off from college because I wasn't able to function properly. Every day I would just think back to all our good memories and wish I had stayed at home to spend more time with him. Tolerating my stepbrother was nothing if it meant I could make more memories with my dad. A few weeks later, a lawyer contacted me saying he wanted to talk about my dad's inheritance. It turns out that my dad had left the house as well as all the money he had to my name. And since I was already 21, I could lay a claim to it immediately. I hadn't even processed that information yet when out of nowhere, I received a call from my stepbrother. I thought he was going to offer his condolences and ask me to come back home, but no. Apparently, he had been promised a new car by my dad and was hoping to fulfill that wish once he was given his inheritance. But he was furious when he found out my dad had left him with nothing. So now he was calling me to ask for his rightful share, and demanded that I buy him a brand new car with the money I had just received. Not even a month had gone by since my dad's passing, so I was shocked to see that he had moved on already and was only talking about his money. It was clear to me that he held no love for my dad, so I wasn't going to entertain his ridiculous demand. The money my dad had left me was supposed to be for my future, and not to spend on luxury items. I told him that whatever promise he had with my dad was gone, and I wasn't going to buy him a car. He began yelling at me, calling me a selfish bitch when my stepmother snatched the phone and said that he didn't mean what he said. She knew that insulting me would only make me mad, and told me, "Your dad really did promise to buy your brother a car. I think it's only fair that you honor his legacy by doing good on his promise." I thought about it for a second, and asked them where they were. They said they were in their house, and I remembered that I now owned that property. So I told them, "You are no longer my family, and don't bother asking me for any handouts. By the way, that house belongs to me, so get out before I call the police on you for trespassing." My awful niece smashed my daughter's face into her cake on her birthday. My daughter's 5th birthday was 2 days ago and it was the most hectic birthday party ever. My daughter basically planned the entire birthday since she invited her friends and picked out all the decorations. The party was just going to be family and friends in the backyard of our house. Everyone arrived relatively on time, except for my sister. She came hours late with her children. I don't want to sound like a mean aunt, but her children are bad, disrespectful, selfish, and lack any manners. My sister essentially messed around and found out. There was a period of time where she went broke. My parents refused to help her because she had lied to them about going to college when she actually dropped out and used the money they would send her to buy substances. She never bothered to contact me for help because we were never on the best of terms since she always argued with me whenever she saw me, so she didn't have my number back then. In order to get back on her feet, she hooked up with guys for money. Things went wrong and she got pregnant 2 separate times by 2 guys who didn't want anything to do with her. Because her whole hookup thing was very anonymous, she had no way to find them, so she couldn't even get child support from these guys. She was alone to raise these kids, but she resents them and it shows, which is why she doesn't care about how they act. She couldn't care less about them being rude to people or not having any proper manners. If anything, they remind her of a period in time where she was at her lowest. She's also grown to hate me even more than she already did because I went to college, have a good job that pays well, and have a happy family. Ever since my daughter was born, my sister would have to hear about her from other family members or see her at family events. I can tell she doesn't like my daughter and I didn't want to invite her to the party because of it, but my daughter is too young to understand that her aunt doesn't like her and sees the world through rose-tinted glasses where the word hate doesn't even exist. The party was going well and my daughter was having a lot of fun. She especially loved the red carpet surprise we did when she entered the backyard in her dress and heels. I heard my niece ask her mom why she never had that for her birthday and it actually made me sad. I don't think it's fair how my sister treats her kids, but if I ever tried to lecture her about her kids, she would throw a huge tantrum and call me names. But now that I think about it, I don't think my nieces ever had birthday parties. Which would explain why she did what she did. When it was time to cut the cake, my daughter sat in her high princess chair with both of my nieces sitting on chairs on her left and right side. We turned the lights off, lit the candles, and we all started to record as we sang happy birthday. I knew this was a party my daughter would never forget, but not for the right reasons. Just as my daughter was about to blow out her candles, one of my nieces blew it out and the other one smashed my daughter's face into the cake. Not only was that incredibly dangerous, but so humiliating and it ruined my daughter's birthday. My husband and I rushed to my daughter and I unintentionally pushed the one that smashed her face into the cake onto the floor. She started crying, but I didn't care. The worst part is that some family members were still recording. I yelled at them to stop, but my sister started yelling at me for being immature, pushing her daughter, and said that my daughter was being dramatic. She said her daughters were just joking around, so my daughter was just crying for attention. I told her that her daughters were out of control and they had no right to do this because it was my daughter's birthday, not theirs. Any pity I had for my nieces quickly left my body as I wiped the cake off of my daughter's face. My husband did damage control by getting people to stop recording and trying to kick my sister and her daughters out without causing a bigger scene. But that didn't work since my sister went as far as calling my daughter the N-word because she's half black from her dad's side. Her daughter started joining her and calling her that, and that's when my husband had enough. He threatened to call the cops if they didn't leave, but I never expected what happened next. My boyfriend keeps getting into fistfights with the chef at Waffle House on purpose. This is some Family Guy stuff. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. Due to both of our degrees and attending the same college, we make a fairly nice combined income. Our income is relevant because we could afford to eat somewhere nice when we're out and about, but he always wants breakfast food. When he was a child, his dad couldn't stand eating breakfast-type food in the afternoon or evenings, so his mom would make him waffles, pancakes, eggs and bacon in the evening whenever his dad was busy or out of town. It's a wonderful and safe memory for him. My boyfriend is an incredibly nice and caring person. He's emotionally tuned into everyone and recognizes arising issues a long time before they occur. He loves animals, and is kind and gentle with every bug, bird and pet that he comes across. He's almost always willing to turn the other cheek in social situations where somebody tries to insult him or get aggressive towards him, and usually winds up diffusing the situation and having a productive discussion about whatever the issue was. Except at Waffle House. Anytime we're out, he wants to go to the same goddamn Waffle House and get breakfast food. I'm not a big eater, so I used to not really care. I would just drink coffee and read my book while he enjoyed his food. But that became impossible once he and this one cook started chirping at each other every time we went there. My boyfriend complained about his eggs one time, because he likes them a little runny and they were served hard. The cook responded by giving him scrambled eggs. When he brought it up again, the cook served him 2 hard-boiled eggs. I think it was just part of the cook's shtick, and it was kind of funny, but my boyfriend wasn't able to laugh it off. When we left, he was in kind of a bad mood, but we didn't really talk about it. The next week we were out getting some shopping done, and he wanted to go to Waffle House again. I suggested that we try out a different place, or at least a different Waffle House location, but he only wanted the same Waffle House. We went in and sat down, and once again the same cook served his eggs wrong. My boyfriend sort of snapped at him that he wasn't interested in messing around, and just wanted the correct eggs. The cook then served him a piece of toast with a hole cut out in the middle with a fried egg in it. My boyfriend got really mad and threw the egg toast at the cook, which made the cook come around from behind the bar and throw it back at him. They ended up fighting until my boyfriend was like, "This is crap," and walked out. Nobody got hurt, but the few other people in there were watching and laughing a bit. This is the crazy part: my boyfriend keeps going back and ordering eggs and getting into fistfights with the same cook. It's almost a ritual at this point. My boyfriend orders runny eggs, the cook serves him some other version of eggs, and then they beat the crap out of each other. I quit going with him after the second fight, but he kept going by himself. They physically fought like 6 or 7 times over this. I've tried to talk to him about it a few times, but he keeps saying it's a matter of principle. I've told him to talk to the manager or something like that, but he just waves me off. Apparently that cook hasn't yet made him the correct runny eggs, but it's like he spends the week learning new ways of preparing eggs to tick my boyfriend off. The thing is, we're getting married this summer. He's accepted a job in a new city and it'll be easy for me to find work after the wedding, so we'll be moving away from his sworn enemy Waffle House guy. My feminist girlfriend said she would never take my last name because tradition is misogynistic, so I broke up with her. I have been dating my girlfriend for 1 year, and our relationship has been perfect except for one small thing. My girlfriend is what I would call a hardcore feminist. She is really active on social media and very vocal about her views on women empowerment. I actually thought it was one of her good qualities at first, and fell in love with how she would get so passionate about some topics. When the bald, stinking pig got famous on Instagram, she was one of the first ones to diss him out and did so brutally. She also got really passionate about the Barbie movie when it was released, and I thought it was cute how she dressed all pink to go watch it. But sometimes, she doesn't know where to draw the line, and last night was one such time. I was over at her place and we were just looking through our phones. One of our old friends had recently gotten married and posted on social media about how she was happy to take her husband's last name. Out of nowhere, my girlfriend said, "Oh my God, look at this misogynist tradition." I got dumbstruck and asked her what she meant. She began explaining how men had created this tradition to undermine women and that our friend was being manipulated into abandoning her family. I pointed out that she seemed happy to do it, and that no one had forced her into accepting that tradition. She just brushed off my comment, and kept going on about how all traditions were just made by men to degrade women. Once again, I tried pointing out that all tradition couldn't possibly have been created by just men. She paused and looked at me directly with a face that said, "Are you serious?" And then asked me, "Would you want me to take your last name?" I got a bit flustered because I had never really thought of marriage, so I just replied, "I mean, it would make me really happy if you do." After hearing that, it was like a switch was flipped in her head. She explained how I was emotionally manipulating her into accepting, and that I was a misogynist just like the others. I asked who others were, and she said that all men are secretly part of that group. I laughed and exclaimed that if all men were like that, then the word men would just be replaced with misogynists. She actually became angry at that point, and accused me of laughing at her feelings. I really didn't get why she was getting so worked up on this topic, as it really was irrelevant in my opinion. But I decided that it was just better to leave and go back to my house to give her some time to cool down. Before I reached home, I already had texts from her accusing me of being controlling and trying to undermine her. But I didn't think that I had said anything close to outrageous, and thought that her comments were unnecessary and demeaning. I really had to sit down and think for a minute. Did I really want to spend the rest of my life with someone who badmouths me and my character over something that is completely unrelated to me? I realized how toxic my girlfriend was actually being, and that I couldn't see a future where I would propose to her. Now, if this was something that she had picked up recently, I would have tried to get her into therapy. But she was like this from before we had even met. So I decided that it was just better to break it off because I had really lost feelings after she accused me like that. I texted her about my thoughts, and told her that we should go our separate ways. But she didn't like that at all, and went completely ballistic. She began saying that she was right, and that I was indeed a misogynist who didn't like when his girlfriend voiced her opinions. I knew that arguing with her would be pointless, so I just blocked her. But never did I expect that she would go on social media and do something even crazier.
My insane sister-in-law is naming her child after my stillborn daughter, and it is making me uncomfortable. When I talked to her about it, she called me a beach. 3 months ago, I was scheduled to give birth to my daughter. But it ended up being a stillbirth, and I was heartbroken. My husband and I are still grieving the loss of our child, and I sometimes wish to forget that horrible day. My mother is Irish and I was going to name my baby after my great-auntie from Ireland. But our happiness was devastated within moments. My family rallied around us and so did my husband's parents, but his sister was a different story. The first time she heard of this, she told me to get over it and just move on. I couldn't believe that she had no sympathy for me, but just ignored her because I didn't have the strength to fight. But I did avoid meeting her until recently, when she made a big announcement. She was 20 weeks pregnant and was having a daughter. I was so happy for her, but was once again reminded that I could never meet my own daughter. That being said, I was ready to be there for her, until we received the invitations for her baby shower. The name she had picked for her daughter was the exact same name as my stillborn. I literally burst into tears while looking at it. My sister-in-law has no connection with Ireland or the name, so I was really hurt and thought that she's rubbing the whole situation in my face. My husband called her and asked her why she picked that name. She just said that since we couldn't use it in time, she decided to go with it as she didn't want the name to go to waste. She also clarified that she isn't naming her baby after mine and that she doesn't want a connection between them. I was once again hurt by her lack of consideration, and decided to decline the invite to her baby shower. I thought she would just ignore me after doing all that, but I was wrong. She called me and began yelling at me, "Why can't you just be happy for me like you're supposed to? You're a sour beach who's going to end up all alone. Stop being jealous over nothing." I couldn't even say anything in response before she hung up, and I was left crying. I am now feeling really bad about not going to her baby shower, and feel like I should at least send her a gift. But her lack of care is still bothering me, so a part of me wants to get back at her by making it a terrible gift. And after consulting with my husband, I decided to do just that.